Sinister Report. Happy Saturday. How is everyone doing? How's your weekend going? What is up, Carol, Matthew, Joanne, Mod Squad, Shelly, Jennifer Marie, Emily, Dusty, Chris Barber, Theo. I'm probably going to butcher this name. I do apologize in advance. Seob Han Early, Tyranna. Sorry, I have quite a list to go through. Bernadette's in the house. Kyle. Lisa Boo. All right, I think I caught up. How's everyone doing? We'll wait a few more minutes before we get into the nitty-gritty. We did get some sad news yesterday in the horror community. One of the greatest icons, one of my favorite actors in the horror community passed away yesterday. Tony Todd, if you guys aren't familiar with him, he played Candyman. He's also been in the Final Destination films. I believed he played like a morgue dude. But what made him so iconic was his voice. He was scary as hell. I'm seeing all these on social media. There's people that interviewed him, said he was like the nicest guy. That he took the time to listen to you, gave him his attention, stuff like that. So, and I think he was only 69. As of yesterday, I didn't look today, but there was no cause of or Tony Todd, there was no cause of death. So I'm not sure. Yes, he was 69. I just wanted to make sure. I am not sure what he passed of. Lisa Boo, thank you for being a member of the Wolf Pack for 19 months. Hearts for Lisa Boo, guys. Mod Squad Network said he just finished the latest Final Destination movie. That is super sad. I was like in shock because 69 is pretty young to. I feel like you still have a lot to live at that time, but Leonore, thank you also for being a member of the Wolf Pack for 11 months. Hearts for Leonore. Like I thought it was a joke at first because you know how sometimes and so I Googled it and I was like, no. So I will miss Tony Todd as Candyman. Probably one of my favorite horror movies. I have so many. It's a big shocker. Someone I grew up with, so when you see stuff like that, you're like, whoa. But rest in peace, Tony Todd. Kyle, thank you for being a member of the Wolf Pack for 11 months as well. Hearts for Kyle. Thank you, Kyle, for the support. I'm going to start off, before I get into the main topic, I'm going to start off with some movie news. I didn't find a real good article about upcoming movies, but I did find one about movies coming in 2025. One of them's coming at the end of 2024. Tyranna, thank you for being a member of the Wolf Pack for 16 months. Hearts for Tyranna as well. Thank you everyone for the support. So, 2025 is the year of the classic Universal Monsters movie adaptations. I know there's going to be a Frankenstein. There's also going to be Nosferatu. So back when Disney was scooping up the rights to fairy tales, Universal was doing the same with literary monsters that have since become classics. Movies such as Frankenstein's Dracula and The Wolfman all had movies come out in the 30s and 40s. Did everyone become a member today? Like, Was this the day where everyone became a member? Julissa, thank you for being a member of the Wolfpack for 19 months. Love movie news. Thank you, Julissa. Hearts for Julissa as well. Rooster, how's it going? Still to come in 2024. First, we have Robert Eggers' adaptation of Nosferatu, which I am looking forward to. The 1922 original was an unauthorized German adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The Stoker estate had a problem with this and sued the studio, demanding that all copies be destroyed. Some survived. 9 years later, Universal would do their own film based on the Bloodsucker, Who, The Fabulous Brooch, and the rest is history. Eggers' version of Nosferatu comes out on December 25th. That is a great date for a vampire. That is a great release date, I think, for this type of movie. Werewolves. I had no idea they were coming out with a werewolves movie. I love werewolves movie. In fact, you could tell I have my Howling shirt on today. Werewolves. Before that, we get Werewolves on December 6th. Universal originally featured the cursed lycanthrope in 1935 in a film called Werewolf in London. Since then, the hairy monster has become associated with the Universal label. Werewolves isn't an official Universal film, and the reason filmmakers can get around that is because their creature is an independent interpretation of the creature. Coming in 2025 is Frankenstein. All these, actually, I've been looking forward to all of these. Director Guillermo del Toro is currently piecing together his interpretation of the famous Frankenstein monster. I did probably a couple months ago, while he was filming, he was staying at a haunted hotel, and he told us about his experiences there and how he likes to stay in haunted hotels. So I thought that was kind of cool. After the dismantling of Universal's Dark Universe concept, in which the studio was going to make new versions of their classic movies, a different version of this movie was scrapped. Del Toro decided to make his own standalone adaptation. Wolfman, which comes out January 17th of 2025. I have not watched this trailer, but I've seen it floating around. Lee Wynell, I don't know why I said it in a southern twang, is also entering the world of Universal Monsters with his version of the Wolfman, which was pretty cool because I forgot what movie it was in for, and he was interviewing them for Nuke the Fridge. I think it was Insidious. And I remember I was his camera person when he was interviewing him, and he was interviewing Leigh Whannell, so it was kind of cool. Universal is behind the project, which will open in theaters on January 17th. Blumhouse is also taking a production credit. Originally, Ryan Gosling was supposed to be the male lead, but that role was eventually given to Christopher Abbott. Longline, a family at a remote farmhouse is attacked by an unseen animal, but as the night stretches on, the father begins to transform into something unrecognizable. Sinners, I have seen this trailer. What I like about this trailer is they don't tell you, they really don't show you or tell you like who or what they're afraid of or who they're fighting against. So I think that's kind of cool. I am looking forward to this one as well. Warner Brothers is taking a crack at its own vampire story, this one taking place in 1930s Louisiana. With the success of Abigail and an official Universal picture earlier this year, it will be interesting to see how this new Michael P. Jordan take on the classic monsters plays out. Longline, trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. The Bride, again, Warner Brothers appropriates another Universal classic, this time with their take on The Bride of Frankenstein. This film is inspired by the James Whale's version from 1935 and Mary Shelley's classic novel. The film stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Christian Bale. It's directed by Gyllenhaal's sister, Maggie. Basically, the synopsis, I don't know why they say Longline, but the synopsis, I cannot talk today. In 1930 Chicago, Frankenstein asked Dr. Euphonius to help create a companion. They give life to a murdered woman as the bride, sparking romance, police interest, and radical social change. Dracula, I guess they're making another one. Director Luke, but not that I don't like vampire movies, because I do love vampire movies, so the more the merrier. Director Luke Besson, The Fifth Element and Taken, is putting his artistic spin on yet another adaptation of Dracula. This one is titled Dracula, A Love Tale. Again, this film is not a Universal Picture project, but a production from France in association with Warner Brothers. After his wife dies, a 15th century prince renounces God and becomes a vampire. A century later, in 19th century London, he sees a woman resembling his late wife and pursues her, sealing his own fate. Very similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula. Nothing wrong with that. Bram Stoker's Dracula is probably one of my favorite Dracula movies, with Gary Oldman playing Dracula himself. I mean, you did have Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, amazing cast, but the acting was kind of not the greatest with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, but I still love the story. But it looks like that is it for that article. Brandon, what is up? Sorry, guys, I'm losing my voice. Lisa Boo, thank you for gifting 1 membership, and welcome Fuzz to the Wolf Pack. Hearts to Lisa Boo. And as always, guys, Skeleduck is somewhere in this background. If you guys do not know what the hell I'm talking about, give me a second here. Skeleduck is pictured in the upper right left-hand corner, might be your upper right-hand corner. I hide him in the background. Just remind me at the end of the stream and I reveal his location. But that is what he looks like. And Carol has already found him. Chris Barber goes, as long as they don't suck. That's the only problem. You get so hyped for a movie and then it's like a disappointment. I hate that. I hate that. Bernadette goes, just a reminder, when a membership is gifted, it randomly pulls a name, so they may not be in here. It's similar to Twitch. I got a gifted membership and I don't think I was on, which is weird. And Bernadette, if you guys want to join me on Twitch and haven't done so, I am on there as well. As Grayson Report, I do have a DJ one as well. Bernadette is over there saying hello. But the link is in the chat if you guys want to join over there and prefer Twitch. Leonor goes, it's so hard to make a good werewolf movie, especially if they do. I am all about practical effects, and it seems like these newer movies, they are using CGI. And that's where the disappointment comes in for me, because I'm like, I'd rather see an actual werewolf, not something created by a computer. Not to say that CGI is bad, because I have seen some very amazing CGI work in a movie where you couldn't tell what was real and wasn't. So, but there's some that you can see. So I'm open to both, but Kyle goes, I want to see a creature from the Black Lagoon. I think there's a lot of, I think James Wan, I think he is in the works for that one. Kyle, for the Black Lagoon remake. And it was announced over the summer. He's in talks. It goes, the project is described as a grounded, modernized retelling that leans into visceral horror whilst paying respect to the original classic. It's been 70 years since the creature from the Black Lagoon first graced the big screen in the 1954 adaptation, directed by Jack Arnold and starring Richard Carlson and Julia Adams. And then Guillermo del Toro has tried to reboot the black and white monster movie. But it is in talks, but I don't think it's in production. I think that's basically where they're at with that one. But there might be one coming soon, Kyle. Bernadette goes, I know he wasn't a werewolf, but the one from Ninja Turtles 2 scared the crap out of me. He looked like a werewolf, though. Was it Bebop? Bebop was the rhino. Matthew goes, just don't watch the creature from the Blue Lagoon with Brooke Shields. All right, hold on. Let me find my link. Where the heck is that link? Did I not put it on here? I hate when I do that. Here it is. So have you guys ever heard of the Corpsewood Manor Murders? I'm going a little true crime-ish here with the main topic. It can be spooky. It does involve Satanism. Bernadette goes, his name was Razhard. Kyle goes, Toka and Raza. Chris has, Joanne, no. Lisa Boo, no. Emily, no. Julissa, no. Leonore's like, dun, dun, dun. So, with that note, so oh my God, I can't talk today. The Corpsewood Manor Murders, a story of Satanism, S parties, and S slaughter. In December of 1982, Charles Scudder and his partner Joseph Odom were brutally murdered in their Corpsewood home by two acquaintances in a drug-fueled robbery gone awry. Here's a portion of the mansion. At the time of the murders, as you can see, they had gargoyles on it. The name kind of reminds me of a castle in the medieval times on a hill. Dr. Charles Scudder came from a wealthy family and worked as a professor of pharmacology at Chicago's Loyola University, a good job by his own definition, described by those who knew him as brilliant, polished, and soft-spoken, but confident. Scudder eventually grew fed up with city life and in 1976 left the luxury of his Chicago mansion in pursuit of a simpler life. As he put it, Scudder longed for an escape from taxes, light bills, gas bills, water bills, heating bills, and the helpless feeling that resulted from watching my old neighborhood disintegrate into an urban ghetto. So the 50-year-old chose an isolated. I'm sorry, guys, I cannot read today. Isolated spot in the North Georgia woods to begin his new life. And I can't read even with new glasses. After leaving behind most of his worldly possessions, he headed for the South with his lover, Joe Odom, constructing a new residence by hand in the depths of the forest. As Scudder said, within 2 short years, we were living in an elegant mini castle. They called it Corpsewood Manor, named for the hauntingly bare autumn trees that dotted the area. That is a awesome name. Like I said, I feel like when I hear Corpsewood Manor, I think of a freaking castle off on the top of the hill with, and fog around it and stuff like that. I don't know. That's what I'm picturing it. To complete their country castle, the two added on a 3-story chicken house. The first floor was for the poultry and food storage, the second for canned goods and the couple's pea collection, and the third for their pink room, also known as their pleasure chamber. I don't want to know. I know, but I don't want to know. But Charles Scudder's relationship with Joe Odom was far from the only secret he'd been keeping, for he was also an official member of the Church of Satan. Inside Charles Scudder's Corpsewood Manor, pictured here is Charles Scudder with his dog Beelzebub. That dog does look like a Beelzebub. Indeed, there was much more to the soft-spoken, secretly Satanist doctor than meet the eye, and it's usually the ones you least expect. Even at Loyola Scudder's work was not that of the typical academic. For one, he performed government-funded experiments with mind-altering drugs like LSD. Meanwhile, he dyed his hair purple and kept a pet monkey. And when he left Loyola for Corpsewood Manor, he took a few souvenirs with him, including 2 human skulls and about 12,000 doses of LSD. Why? I mean, I get the human skulls, but why the... Now souvenirs in hand, Scudder was free to express his Satanism within the confines of Corpsewood Manor. This forest sanctuary was guarded by 2 mastiffs, Beelzebub and Arsenith, I guess. One named for a demon, the other an H.P. Lovecraft character. Local legend adds that the pair also summoned a real demon to assist the dogs in guarding the house. I definitely don't want to be anywhere near that house. D-Nice, what is up? Leonardo goes, I don't want to know about the... I don't either. Yes, it says that he had it said he had a pet monkey, and I'm like, I mean, it's cool. Fittingly, Scudder and Odom also decorated Corpsewood Manor with various gothic paraphernalia, including the skulls that Scudder had swiped and a pink gargoyle he had brought from his old mansion. Scudder himself thought of Corpsewood Manor as more like a mausoleum, a tomb requiring care, cleaning, and endless costly repairs. Scudder also fashioned a stained glass window adorned with a prophet known as Baphomet. Baphomet is the goat god, if you're not familiar. If you watch Sabrina, the Teenage Witch on Netflix, they had a likeness of Baphomet. And the Church of Scientology. The Church of Satan sued Netflix for the use of Baphomet in the show. Baphomet is like the symbol for Satanism. Sorry, guys. An important figure in the Church of Satan, and while Scudder took his Satanism seriously, he didn't worship Satan. Instead, he was a staunch atheist who chose to celebrate the base worldly pleasures, and he and the other church members felt were denied them by the other Abrahamic religions. So he didn't take it seriously, but he just thought it was better than the other religions because the other religions had like sin. Satanism, I don't think, has that. That's what I'm getting out of what I just read. And celebrates such pleasures they did. Scudder and Odom like to invite guests over for wild S parties in the pink room, which was filled with mattresses, candles. I don't even know if I should continue with... This is like Grayson Report After Dark. Dun, dun, dun! Kyle goes, I'm getting Bible Black vibes. Kyle's like, join the dark side. We have cupcakes. Yeah, that's how I feel by reading this. I don't know if I should continue. Whips, chains, and even a logbook listing guests' sexual predilections. But while these acts were reportedly consensual, the pink room parties are the reason that on the night of December 12th in 1982, Corpsewood Manor turned into a bloody murder case. So this is one of the rooms. Actually, that is a weird room. This is one of the rooms because it says interior of the Corpsewood Manor. That looks like it's like straight out of because there's like a chamber pot. That is crazy. With Scudder and Odom encouraging all their guests to indulge their every whim in a haze of S&D, things were bound to implode, though perhaps no one predicted just how bloody this end would be. Among the locals that Scudder and Odom befriended were 17-year-old Kenneth Avery Brock and his roommate, 30-year-old Samuel Tony West. And for me, why would someone have a roommate that's 17 years old? That is fishy. Information is scarce and reports vary, but at least according to Amy Petula's The Corpsewood Manor Murder in North Georgia, Brock may have had several S encounters with Scudder at Crosswood. And mind you, Brock is underage. That is crazy. Other accounts claim that Brock had merely gotten permission from Scudder and Odom to hunt on their property, and after befriending them on their sprawling estate, came to believe they were much wealthier than they actually were. Nonetheless, some kind of relationship between Brock and West and Scudder and Odom was struck. According to Putula, West strongly objected to any kind of SA, and this is not the ABUSE. It is the ACTIVITY with the older couple. Though Brock may have invited it, he may have also convinced Brock that he'd been taken advantage of by Scudder. Again, whether Brock had actually been taken advantage of remains unclear. Nevertheless, Brock and West decided to return to Corpsewood to rob Scudder and Odom. Brock and West, with two teenagers named Joey Wells and Teresa Hudgens, along for the ride, headed to Corpsewood Manor on December 12th of 1982 with pew-pews in tow. Initially, the four guests acted as if they were just there to hang out and accepted Scudder's offer to homemade wine, as well as a potent huffing mixture of varnish, paint thinner, and other chemicals. At some point during this de-fueled haze, Brock got down to business, retrieving a longer pew-pew from the car and promptly pew-pewing Odom and the two dogs. Then Brock and West did all they could to force Scudder to give up whatever money he had. What Brock and West hadn't realized was that there was no riches at the house of any kind, and when they did eventually accept this fact, they pew-pewed Scudder 5 times in the head, took what little valuables were lying around, and fled the scene. So here is another outside shot of the manor or the mansion. Obviously, I mean, looking at the earlier picture of the interior, it looked like they had no money. It just looked like they didn't even they added what they wanted and they left the rest to kind of as the condition that when they bought the house. Brock and West fled all the way to Mississippi, where they killed a man named Kirby Phelps as part of a robbery gone wrong on December 15th of that year. Afterward, perhaps feeling remorseful, Brock returned to Georgia and turned himself into police on December 20th. West did the same in Chattanooga, Tennessee on the 25th. Eventually, West was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to death, while Brock pleaded guilty and received 3 consecutive life terms. With that came the end of the strange and bloody story of the Corpsewood Manor murders, but many questions remain. At the trial, West and Brock recounted the night's bloody events. They claim that after binding and gagging Scudder in his pink room, the professor, I'm wondering if it really was pink. I don't know. I'm assuming it is. The professor eerily said, "I asked for this before being unalived." Chillingly, the professor had a portrait of himself done months prior to the tragedy in which he is pictured gagged with bees in his head. And because Scudder was a Satanist and openly gay, rumors have circulated about him and Odom since their deaths. It didn't help that at the trial, West said of them, "All I could say is they were devils and I unalived them. That's how I feel about it." The bloody tragedy at Corpsewood Manor in 1982 has since become something of a satanic, sex-fueled myth, but could it be perhaps that prejudice against the victim's sexual orientation and religious beliefs were really at the center of it all? That is crazy. I've never heard of that. That's the first time hearing it. Elaine, what is up? I feel like it was Grayson Report After Dark for a minute there. But I don't know. They're claiming robbery, but then which could be because the Scudder and Odom were throwing parties, so these teenagers, one of them was 30 though, but teenagers thought they were rich. That's understandable, because if someone's throwing parties all the time, you're going to assume they have money. But at the end of the article, it's saying that it could be because of their sexual orientation is the reason why it happened. But we will never know. Justice was served on that case. They are life in prison. The younger one got life or 3 consecutive, and the other guy got it could be they could have been against the Satanism too. That could have been it as well. The other one was sentenced to death. So justice was served on that, but we will never know the exact. Yeah, I know, Leonore, not the 30-year-old, but the other ones. The two. Well, I mean, they had 2 other teenagers with them, but they weren't involved in the crime. Delay Lex, what is up? But that is a crazy story. Sometimes I'm like this when I'm reading. I'm like, oh, cover my ears. That's too much when I read some of these articles. I'm like, the alert is going off on their end. They're like, let's get this girl. So the one thing, I've always talked about all different types of folklore, and I just realized I have never talked about Canadian folklore. I was like, let's talk about some Canadian folklore. So I'm going to share with you some Canadian folklore. I do have another Canadian folklore article that I'm going to share with you as well. This is kind of like general ones, and then I have one that goes more in depth about I don't know if this about the La Corpsewood. I hope I am saying that correct. I believe I have an article that goes more in depth about that one. So there's the ghost, and I love folklore. I don't think I think there's still people out there that still believe in the folklore, and they probably wouldn't. Why is there a pin up here? They probably would, go buy it with the tea, and then there's others that would be like, oh, that's just folklore. I don't believe in that stuff. But without further ado, we've got the ghost in the alley. Matthew Goes Canada, where the ghosts scare you and say sorry for doing it. What? So we're going to start off with the ghost in the alley. Rumors were rife about the alleyway behind the tavern. It was haunted, folks said, haunted by the ghost of a young girl who had been found murdered in the in that self-same passage. People avoided the small street. Again, sorry guys, I cannot read tonight. Small street after dark, for the spirit was said to be a vengeful one. Of course, no one could name anyone whom the ghost had actually killed, but the tales were enough to keep people away from the alley at night. Kyle goes, we got our own stories that don't get out in the media. I'm pretty sure. There's probably some crazy ones too. La Corpsewood, I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Marie Joseph Corpsewood was a beautiful but ruthless woman. She married a good-looking man, but soon grew bored with him. So late one evening, she stunned her husband with a blow to the head, then took a whip to his horse, which trampled him to death. The death was ruled an accident, and La Corpsewood was free to marry again. I like that one because it kind of rhymed. The first tears. Once long ago, a man went hunting along the water's edge for seals. To the man's delight, many seals were crowded together along the seashore. He would certainly bring home a great feast for women and son. That one kind of ended. How selfishness was rewarded. A young warrior came to the coast with his wife and mother one summer and settled in the place where Sitka now stands. It was a summer of hardship for the family because the fish stayed away from the coast and the game had moved far away from the mountains. The warrior set traps and laid a nest in the water and wandered many miles hunting for food, but he found nothing. The family had to eat berries and green sprouts and dig for roots to eat. Even so, there was barely enough each day to keep the family going. The Wendigo There's also a Wendigo in Native American legend. The storm lasted so long that they thought they would starve. Finally, excuse me, guys. Finally, when the wind and swirling snow had died away to just a memory, the father, who was a brave warrior, ventured outside. The next storm was already on the horizon, but if food was not found soon, the family would starve. I feel like that doesn't really explain the Wendigo. Saint Nicholas and his children. Elaine, thank you for that super sticker of the fitness pair. Hearts for Elaine. If you guys are wondering why I call it a fitness pair, it's because the pair is wearing a sweatband on his head. So fitness pair it is. Thank you, Elaine. Hearts for Elaine, guys. Saint Nicholas and his children. I hope this one isn't one where someone's being eaten. Two little children lived with their old grandmother in a remote place in the Canadian forest. They were twin children, a boy and a girl, Pierre and Estelle by name. And except for their dress, it was not easy to tell them apart. Their father and mother had died in the springtime, and in the summer they had left their old home because of its many sad memories and had gone to live with their old grandmother in a new home elsewhere. I feel like these don't really explain. Because I feel like I'm being teased. Oh, I see what it is. It's like excerpts of a book. Let me see if I can find a better. Because I feel like that's teasing us. And it's not really giving us like the whole. What? I don't think that's the story. Oh, I guess it's American folklore too. All right, I feel like this one's better. Hold on, because I feel like we're getting teased by that one. I really do. I don't feel like that one was giving us. All right, this is St. Nicholas and the children. In this new home in the forest where they now live, they were very poor, but they were not unhappy. Times were hard, and there was very little food to be had on no matter how well their old grandmother worked. But they caught fish in the stream and gathered berries and fruits and birds' eggs on the wooded hills. Somehow, throughout the summer, they kept themselves but from want. But when late autumn came and the streams were frozen over and the berries were all gone and there were no eggs, the birds had all flown south. They were often hungry because they had so little to eat. Their grandmother worked so hard to provide for herself and the children that at last she fell very sick. For several days she could not leave her bed, and she said, "I want meat broth to make me well, and I must have good meat to make it. If I do not get meat, I can have no broth, and if I do not get broth, I shall not get well. And if I do not get well, I shall die, and if I die, you two children will surely starve and die too. So meat and meat alone can save us all from starvation and death." So the two children, to keep themselves and their grandmother alive, set out one morning in search of meat to make the broth. They lived far from other people and they did not know where to go, but they followed the forest path. The snow lay deep on the ground and sparkled brightly in the sunlight. The children had never before been away from home and alone, and every sight was great interest to them. Here and there a rabbit hopped over the snow, or a snowbird hovered and twittered overhead, all looking for food like the children. And there were holy berries growing in many places, and there was mistletoe hanging from the trees. And Pierre, when he saw the holy berries and the mistletoe, said, St. Nicholas will soon be here, for the trees are dressed and ready for his coming. And Estelle said, yes, St. Nicholas will be soon here. And they were both very glad, thinking of his coming. As they went along in the afternoon, they came upon an old man sitting at the door of a small house of spruce boughs under the trees close to the forest path. He was busy making whittling willow wands with a knife and tapping gently on the bark until the bark loosened from the wood and slipped easily off. The children stood and watched him at his strange work, for he had merry twinkly eyes and a kindly weather-beaten face and thick white hair, and they were not afraid. Hello, said the old man. Hello, said Pierre. Why are you making willow whistles? I am making them for St. Nicholas, said the old man. He's coming soon for his yearly visit. Indeed, he is already in the land. When he makes his rounds, he always gives whistles, among other things, to good children, and I must have a great store of them ready for him when he comes, for there are many children to supply. Then he went on whistling busily with his knife. The children watched him for a long time in silence, and they thought with a fine thing it must be to work like the old man for St. Nicholas in his little house of burrows under the forest tree. Then the old man said, you are very small children. What are you seeking so far away from people? And Estelle answered, our old grandmother is very sick, and we are looking for meat to make broth to make her well. The old man was sorry he had no meat, for he lived on other food. He told them that some distance further along there was a butcher who always kept meat, but the butcher, he said, was a very wicked fellow, and sometimes little children who entered his shop never came out again. The children were very frightened when they heard what the old man said. They wondered if they had better go back home, but the old man thought for a long time in silence as he whittled his willow wands, and then he said, I will give you each a whistle, and when you blow it, St. Nicholas will always hear it. You must never blow it except when you are in a great trouble or distress, and when St. Nicholas hears it, he will know that you are coming to grief or that harm is already upon you, and he will come himself or send someone to your assistance. But you must blow only one blast. The whistle should be given only by St. Nicholas himself when he comes at holy time into the land. But you are good children, and your old grandmother is sick, and you are trying to make her well, and I know that St. Nicholas will not say that I've done wrong. So he gave the children each a whistle, and then feared left them, for they knew they could now come to no harm if they had the aid of St. Nicholas. Thank you, Leonor. It was growing late in the afternoon, and the children set out on their way to find the wicked butcher, but they had many misgivings, and as they went on, they grew faint of heart, for they wondered if the old man had told them the truth about the whistles, or if he was in reality a secret agent of the wicked butcher trying to lure them to their death. They resolved to search for meat elsewhere and to keep away from the butcher shop. This is a long story. You guys want me to finish it? I wasn't realizing it was this long. D-Nex goes, now the song Give a Little Whistle from Pinocchio stuck in my head. It is long. I mean, look at it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 paragraphs long, D-Nice. I wasn't realizing it was this long. But the way this other article is, it's not really giving me... I picked the wrong article. I kind of want to know what the story ends. The wicked butcher was in his shop, but not another person was about the place. It was all very quiet. The man was very glad to see the children, and he seated them by the warm fire and gave them food. And although he shut the door tight behind them, their fears soon vanished. After they had eaten well and were warm again, they asked for meat to make broth for their old grandmother. And Butcher said he would give them plenty of good meat, although it was very scarce in all the land. There was a barrel standing in one corner. In another corner was a large hogshead reaching almost to the ceiling. And the butcher said that both of these were full of meat. Now, Dusty goes, tell us what happens at the end of the story. Now the butcher was really the friend and partner of a wicked giant who lived in the forest. The giant's greatest delight was to eat little children. He liked, oh my God, I was joking when I said about the children, eating the children, but it seems like a lot of folk tales are about eating children. He liked no meal so well as a meal of little children, 2 at a time, picked first in brine. He ate them always when he could get them, but he was not always successful in his search, for children were scarce in the land. He was a great hunter, and he was able to kill many animals in the forest and to secure much meat. So great was his strength, and once a week regularly he brought a great load of meat to the butcher and traded it for any little children the butcher managed to entice into his shop. So the butcher got much meat at little cost, and the old man of the house of Burrows was right when he said that many little children who entered the shop never came out again. The butcher was very glad when he saw the 2 pretty little children. He was expecting the giant that evening on his weekly visit, and he thought gleefully of the great load of meat he would get from the giant in exchange for the children. For he would ask a big price, and he knew the giant would give all the meat he had for so good a meal. And he thought, too, of all the money he would get for the giant's load of meat. So he resolved to kill the children and pickled them in brine to await the giant's coming. This is very long. Matthew goes, Solent poo is children? Destiny goes, tell us what happens in the end. Hold on. So apparently they blasted the whistles. Saint Nick came to the rescue. Saint Nick, I guess the giant Saint Nick had said he wanted some meat. And it was at the very bottom of a barrel. And the giant bent over, and while he was bending over, Saint Nick hit him with a bone that happened to be laying like a huge bone. The giant was only slightly stunned, and he lost his balance, so he fell into the brine. So I guess the butcher did put the children in like with pickles. So Saint Nick saw that. He took them out with his magic powers. He gave them food, and warmed them by the fire, and soon there was none the worse for their hours in the barrel of brine. Then he gave them meat and brought them back to their grandmother, as they made broth for her and soon made her well. And they were all happy again, and the land was troubled no more by giants, for St. Nicholas never again allowed great harm to come to little children, if they always kept his whistle near them and blew softly upon it when they were in trouble or distress. There you go. Guys, there is the story of Saint Nick and his children. Holy crap. I'll read the other one because the other one, I am not ordering that now. Elaine's like, I love pickles. So this is the hanging cage that held an infamous Quebec murderist. It had been all but forgotten for most of the 20th century. For centuries, the ghost of Marie Joseph Corriveau had been haunting the cultural consciousness of Quebec, Canada. To many, the legend of La Corriveau is a ghost story of a woman hanged for murder, her corpse put on display as a gruesome warning. But the story of La Corriveau and the gibbet in which she was hanged are based on real historical events, and after over a century away, the actual cage has made its way back home. As a result, Corriveau's legacy has lately been shifting from folktale to historical tragedy. Cannot read today. Marie Joseph Corriveau was born in 1733 in what was at the time a country called New France, which by the time of her death was controlled by the British. The British forces were completely unorganized since Sylvie Toupin, a curator at Quebec Musée de la Civilisation, which currently holds Corriveau's infamous gibbet. There were many tensions because it was a new government and the people weren't happy with what was happening. Ultimately, Corriveau would become a dire symbol of the frustration and disorganization. At the age of 16, she was married to a local farmer. He died in 1760, leaving her alone with 3 children to care for. However, Corriveau quickly found another husband, marrying Louis Etienne Dodier, another farmer from her parish, less than 2 years after the death of her first husband, but he wasn't long for the world either. Dodier turned up dead in January of 1763. Corriveau, I hope I'm saying it right, had a number of very public fights with Dodier over property and business dealings, and Marie had petitioned unsuccessfully to leave her husband on the grounds that he was physically abusive. So when Dodier was found dead in their barn, initially thought to have been the result of being kicked in the head by a horse, the rumors about town soon turned the focus on investigation to murder. Dodier's wounds were re-examined and determined to have been caused by something closer to a pitchfork than horse hooves, and both Joseph and Marie were accused of murdering the man. After initial trial before the military, Joseph was found guilty of Dodier's murder, and Marie was found guilty of being an accomplice. But when Joseph was sentenced to hang for his crimes, he cracked, telling the court that in fact his daughter had committed the murder and that he hadn't turned her in only because trying to keep her from the gallows. When questioned about the shocking turn of events, Marie finally admitted to killing Dodier with a hatchet. Likely embarrassed by the initial wrongful conviction and possibly influenced by fresh questions about her first husband's death that were now being whispered about by locals, the British authorities in charge of the province at the time held a speedy, cursory second trial. It was a military trial because they were not equipped to hold a civil trial, said Toupin. They surpassed their given powers because the King of England did not give the final approval. They sentenced Marie not only to hang, but for her body to be gruesomely displayed in a metal gibbet as a warning. She was hanged in April of 1763, and her body was placed on public display for about 5 weeks in nearby Ponte-Levis. 5 weeks. The smell. They wanted to give the way that they did justice back then was, yeah. They wanted to give an advertisement to the population. That is one reason why I probably would never want to go back in time and be accused of something. I do not want to go through this. They wanted to give an advertisement to the population with the hanging in the cage, said Toupin. It was unusual because the tradition didn't exist anymore in France, but the British still used it, so it was a new thing for us, and for us, an important political symbol. It's still in our memory because what they did was unfair. Corpsewood's extreme sentence, both shocking and cruel, cemented her story in the local history and culture. Eventually, Corpsewood's body, metal gibbet, and all were taken down and buried in an unmarked grave in Point Levis churchyard. And for almost 100 years, that's where she stayed. Her story is slowly taking a mythic dimension, fueled by her sensational, shocking trials and not a small amount of reactionary demonizing of women. The story of La Corpsewood evolved, sometimes gaining supernatural flourishes. As the legend grew over the next several decades, her number of dead husbands rose to 7, and there were whispers of witchery or that she was descended from a famous prisoner. Her popular image became a macabre reflection of her final fate, a skeleton in a hanging cage that would appear to terrorize residents. People tried to understand that event, so they made stories, said Tupin. La Corpsewood is still living among us because many people know the story. So here is the picture that became kind of the symbol, and that's kind of crazy looking. Then in 1851, the gibbet in which she was buried, her cage, was unearthed from the churchyard where it was interred. She was not in the cemetery. They decided to enlarge the cemetery, and they found the cage just by luck, said Tupin. This discovery no doubt injected the folktales with even more life. Versions of La Corpsewood began to appear in Canadian literature, and soon she had become something of a cultural institution, but her cage wouldn't remain in Canada for long. Within months of being dug out of the ground, the gibbet was exhibited in Montreal, Lévis, and Quebec City before ending up in the hands of P.D. Barnum, who put it on display as a curiosity in his New York museum in August of 1851. It had a simple plaque that read "From Quebec." From there, the cage passed to the Boston Museum in Massachusetts around 1869, according to the dates provided by Tupin, which had only recently been unearthed. The cage then passed to the Essex Institution in Salem, Massachusetts around 1899 and was put on display at least once around 1931. According to Dean Lincoln Lehikian, the Carol and Peter Lynch Curator of American Decorative Arts at the Peabody Essex Museum, the modern incarnation of the Essex Institute, it's unclear precisely how long the Institute had the cage on display, but it stayed in their collection for over a century. So here is a picture of that cage that they had her body in display. That is definitely a medieval torture device. Like I said earlier, I'm glad I did not live during that time. I am fascinated with that time period, but I am glad I did not live during that time period. I do not want to experience any of that form of criminal punishment. I'm pretty sure people, I mean, if people saw that now, there'd probably be less people committing crimes, because that is very, yeah. I feel like hanging the body for 3 weeks, that's very unsanitary too. But I think it was normal back then because they did have, when people were being hung at the gallows, there were like a crowd watching. I mean, I guess it's similar to people that are going through the electric chair or doing lethal injection, where they do have, the people involved in the crime witnessing it. But I don't know if I could do that. Dusty, 5 weeks. 5 weeks. Thank you, Dusty. Kyle goes the equivalent of a severed head on a spike. Yes. Yes, definitely. But, or if you stole, like, they would cut off your right hand because your left hand was the one that you would use the restroom with. Your right hand was the one that you ate with. So if you stole, they would cut your right, if I'm not mistaken. This is what I heard. I don't know how real it is, but they would cut off your right hand, so you would have to eat and use the bathroom with your left. But yeah, that is just something. Yeah, I'm glad we don't do that anymore. The legend of La Corpsewood is still a well-known folktale in Quebec, and versions of her story have been turned into a number of books, operas, and more. But thanks to the return of the gibbet in which she met her final fate, the legend and stories are hardening into cold history. In fact, Corey Vue's gibbet is still being tested and studied to see if they might even be able to pull DNA from it. As Tupin said, now it's real, it's there, it's scientific. So it's no more a folklore, because they do actually have her hanging cage. But it's still an interesting story nonetheless. Carol goes, those times were cruel times. Yes, they were. But that was just kind of how they did things back then, and I'm like, no. Let me see if I can find. No, that was the same one. That kind of, I feel like that Canadian folklore like leaves you open. Carol goes, no human rights back then. Not really, because if you believed in something different than the Queen did, you were unalived for it. It's like the Salem witch trials, like I always said. If you did something weird, if you were cured from a sickness or didn't get a sickness, I should say, like if everyone else was getting a sickness and you weren't getting it, they thought you were a witch, and you would, die for it. And it wasn't necessarily you weren't a witch. I mean, if someone didn't catch a disease back then, maybe they just had the antibodies that someone that the other people didn't have. It could have been something, crazy as that. Or if you believed in something else, or something happened that had nothing to do with you, but it just happened and it was like strange, they would unalive you. So it's just, I mean, it's crazy like how we are today compared to how it was. D Nice goes, how would you feel living back then? Good question. I don't think I could. I don't think I could conform to what, like, belief system, because you know how we have the right to believe with whatever we wanted to. I feel like back then they kind of conformed you, like you had to believe what the Queen believed in, or it was like off with your head type of thing. I I I like the time period in the movies, but then the movies doesn't depict like what it really is. It wasn't a very clean time. I like the kings and the knights and the that type of stuff, the chivalry and stuff like that from that time. But I don't think I don't think um I don't like, yeah, it's probably a very dirty time. The medical advancements that we do have now weren't prevalent back then. People were getting sick because it was just simply because they're dirty. Um, yeah, Carol, I agree with you. I'd be very, very careful with everything. Um, if we were a time machine, I'd be very careful that they wouldn't find out that I had a time machine and I'm from the future, because they would unalive me. They would think I was the work of the devil or something. But and I don't know. Yeah, there's things that I don't take for granted that we have that they didn't have back then, like women things. So I feel like it was just very unsanitary back then, and I don't know if I could withstand it. And how they just moved cemeteries, and you'd see people with bodies and walking down the street because they're moving cemeteries. I'm like, no. I agree, Kyle. Movies, TVs, books romanticize the time period. Dusty goes, I'm too defiant to have made it through those times. I think I'm the same way. I'm too headstrong. D Nice goes, who would survive longer back then? You or Luz? I don't know. I mean, obviously, the people that lived back then don't know any better because they don't know what amenities we have now. But if it was something like I'm coming back from this time period to go back there, I would see a complete, it'd be crazy. I'd be looking at people like, and I'll be like, that's disrespecting the dead. Like, how could you do that? And then you'd be like, the person's like, oh, that happens all the time here. You know what I mean? Or, I'd probably, my mouth would be on the ground. And then if I saw anyone sick, I would stay away from them. That had to have been the craziest time. Like this, they'll be like, they have the sweating sickness or something like that. And I'll be like, the names that they had for things were crazy because they couldn't, they didn't know exactly what it was. So, yeah. Even I felt like even too, like not even the 17th, 16th century, but when you go on to the 18th century in the Victorian era, same thing. I don't feel like people were clean back then. Like they were saying one family would use the same bath water. So if you're number 5 taking a bath, you'd be using the bath water that 4 other people were using. So I just feel like, yeah, that time period was not very clean. If that was all I know, then no problem. It'd be cool. But I don't know. It's a crazy time. Even in the old West, they had, crazy ways of justice. But yeah, I don't know. That was a good question, D Nice. Did anyone else have any questions? I'm gonna open up for question, guys. I'll look up a better article. I didn't like that article for Canadian folklore, but that was the only one I could find. But I feel like it gypped me, and it's gypping you guys. So I'm gonna look for a different one, and I'll continue. But I wouldn't mind going back in time once. If I could go back in time safely without them thinking I was the devil's work or something, I would do it. Just to see what that time period was like. Because come on, who would not want to see what it was like in the past? Carol goes, but then again, I'm not a nonconformist. I'd be dead by 15. I feel like if it was the Wild West for me, I'd be like Billy the Kid or something. Dusty, the doctors would drain your blood for almost everything. Exactly, because they did not know what you had. They really, the medical knowledge that they have back then is not as advanced as it is today. If we were telling them, if we went back in time, we're telling doctors, yeah, there's a cure for that. And they'll be like, what devilry is this? But it's crazy. Guys, I'll give you a few more minutes to check, look for Skeleduck. Also, too, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. We're open for questions. And if you're coming in right now, you can catch us on the replay. I did talk about Corpsewood Manor. Went into some Canadian folklore about a long story about Santa and his children. And then talked a little about La Corriveau, which was kind of interesting. And we went into talking about medieval things. Jennifer Murray goes, I'd still be weird as F, but they'd have to catch me. Dusty goes, the doctors would drain your blood for almost everything. Oh, I did read that. Where did I saw something about leeches? Carol, I'm sorry. They also use leeches cure you. Oh my gosh, that's weird. Carol, I'm looking at the chat for just like the YouTube chat, and your comment didn't pop up. It's like YouTube was trying to censor you, Carol, with the leeches. But yeah, I think there's some people that still use leeches today. Carol has an eagle eye, and she's already spot Skeleduck. All right, guys, Skeleduck is all right. If you see the commando poster behind me, he's right there. I don't know if I can point. So there's the commando poster. If you look down right in between the curtain, there he is. Right in between the curtain and the door, there's Skeleduck. He's right there where my finger is pointed. Right there. Matthew's also saying that YouTube's being weird by saying sometimes the hearts I put up in the chat go away until I refresh the chat itself. Carol goes, yes, they do in some cultures. Some of them are maggots. Kyle's like, oh, come on. Why'd you put it there? Matthew goes, Skeleduck commands you. Lisa Boo goes, Bean J Duck. Tyranda goes, good spot. I don't know. I kind of looked over there and I was like, that's a good spot. Carol with the eagle eye spotted him out right away. I don't know how Carol does it. She is the most observant person I know. She is. All right, guys, any last minute questions before I end this stream? I'm going to end it a little short today. Thank you, Matthew. All right, guys, if there are no questions, wait a second because I know there's a delay. Thank you, Tyrana. Thank you, Lisa Boo. All right, guys, if there's no further questions, I am going to end the stream here. Thank you for joining me on this edition of Grace Report. I will see you on the next one, which will be Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be on time on Monday. Don't worry. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be there, be squared, stay spooky, and sweet nightmare, guys. And you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Good night, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.